Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hard4Games channel. I'm your host Tony, and today we are talking about a wide boy. Now, when most people think about the wide boy, which I should say most normal people don't think about the wide boy, but those who are aware of what it actually is, when they think about it, they think about the versions for the Nintendo 64, the CGB and the AGB, Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance. Essentially, these wide boys were tall N64 cartridges that you could plug Game Boy games into and then output the video through the N64 to a television, so you could play your games on a much bigger screen. These were all designed by Intelligent Systems for primarily two purposes. One, for the gaming press, so they could take proper screenshots of handheld titles and also review them with the luxury of that larger screen that I mentioned, so they didn't have to be hunched over like this all the time while playing through a game they were reviewing. The second purpose was for game development. There were additional pieces of hardware that Intelligent Systems had created that basically allowed developers to take a game they were working on and send that ROM through the PC, through the additional piece of hardware, out through a probe unit, which is like a cartridge in and of itself, into the wide boy cartridge, into the N64, and out to the television. Very daisy-chained, but it worked. But alas, we are not talking about those crazy popular, very well-known wide boy units. We're talking about one of the original ones for the original Game Boy. And it is truly a wide boy. Here it is, for the original Game Boy and plugs into the Famicom. This thing is very large and actually dwarfs the Famicom itself. It's pretty hefty in terms of its actual size. So, big thank you to Gaming Legend 64 for sending this bad boy over. We're gonna go ahead and showcase what this is all about, the different parts and pieces of it, and then see if we can actually get it working and talk about some of its features. So here we have the unit itself. It's functionally in two pieces, plus a family computer, a Famicom. Whoops. So here we have our original Game Boy wide boy. It functionally comes in two different parts, the main unit, the Game Boy itself, and of course the Famicom is required here. It's kind of interesting because you can see here the way it actually connects to the Famicom is the exact same way that the Famicom connects to the Famicom disk system. And if you look on the back here, it's actually the exact same model. Or at the very least, I should say that it utilizes the same model shell. I'm not quite sure internally what's going on here. Intelligent Systems was definitely known for being very resourceful and reutilizing parts and pieces whenever they could, because of course, why not do that? Why not save money? This wasn't going to retail, it didn't have to look pretty, so just use something that already existed and worked perfectly fine. So turning it around here, we can see the board itself. There's a lot going on. Here we have a couple different points of note. Of course, we have Wide Boy 3. Right here we have the connection to your game cartridge. It goes top up. There we go. And here we have where it would connect to your Game Boy. You'd plug that in, and of course, screw on these screws to make sure they're nice and tight, which I'm not going to bother with right now. So then we would take the unit and attach it to the Famicom in the cartridge slot. It would actually face kind of backwards here. So basically, Wide Boy 3 would be facing you. And it's a little funky here. I feel like this would, of course, be mounted onto something, I guess, because there's a lot of wiggle here, which I don't particularly like, but I'm assuming, obviously, Intelligent Systems wasn't originally setting this up for some random American to utilize in their basement. I'm assuming there was some sort of setup they had where it was stable and mounted and such. Or maybe it just was wiggly and I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe this is just the way they intended. Who knows? But yeah, at this point you would turn on your Famicom and it would output to the television. In my case, I have this modded for composite. Ooh, normally it would just be RF. And of course, it would also feed to your Game Boy. A lot of the other units, the other like original Game Boy Wide Boys that I see online, all control the game via the Famicom controllers. This one is seemingly the only one we've seen that utilizes an output to the actual Game Boy itself. And speaking of the Game Boy, let's go ahead and cover some features here. So this is of course a normal Game Boy, but a little bit different and modified. It actually gets its power completely from the Famicom itself. So the shell still has, you know, the battery inputs, but as you can see here, there are no metal contacts to actually receive any power. There's no on-off button. And seemingly there's just a hole where the headphone jack is. But, you know, the contrast, the Game Boy link cable, the volume, all that stuff is still intact. So let's go ahead and plug this thing into a TV and see if we can get it to turn on. And just as a reminder to everybody, whenever you're dealing with stuff like this, make sure to utilize the proper power. So if you need a step down or step up converter, whatever you need based on what you're converting to or from, make sure to do that, especially with rare and valuable and like historically important equipment. Make sure that your electricity is not going to destroy anything. So just a little more you know, sort of PSA. All right, this is the moment of truth. Let's go ahead and give this a try. Let's try switching the games. Oh, okay, so we have something. Oh. Finally. Well, this is great. I'm glad I finally got this thing working, thank God. There were two things going on with it. First off, because it's so back heavy, the Wide Boy tends to lift up and disconnect a little bit. So I just put some cartridges underneath it to prop it up, to make sure it was supported, to make sure all the pins were being touched. And of course, I cleaned all of it, which I think probably helped as well. But probably most importantly, just because my Famicom is so old, the input connector on the back I think was just a little bit like loose and it wasn't getting steady power. So I fiddled with it a little bit with one of the normal Famicom cartridges in just to test it, got it working, and then replugged this thing back in, and it seems to be much more stable now. So that is it for today. Big thank you to Gaming Legend 64 for sending this over for me to take a look at. Make sure to check him out on Twitter as well, because he is collecting a ton of different stuff. Beta, prototype, whatever type content, and he's always posting it on Twitter. So it's definitely a little treasure trove of content there. Check it out. I'm gonna go ahead and put a link in the description below. Aside from that, if it is your first time watching my channel, thank you so much for doing so. I hope you subscribe. Feel free to click that notification bell so you know when our videos are coming out, and I hope to see you all next time.